So I'm here to talk about assessments because that's one of my favorite topics when it comes to ELT, especially because where I come from in India, these high stakes exams are really popular, especially exams like IELTS and TOEFL, things like that. But instead of talking about high stakes exams, I'd like to talk about speaking assessments that we all do in our classrooms every single day. Can you maybe tell me a few examples of how you assess students' speaking skills in the classrooms, different kinds of activities that you might use in your classroom? Anyone? Yeah? Presentations, of course. Yeah. Anything else that, yeah?
Summer discussions.
Very good, yeah, very good. Yeah.
Normally I use interviews.
Interviews?
But with weird questions.
Okay, alright, that's very interesting. Okay, like job interviews, okay, that's very interesting. I'll come back and talk to you about that, yeah.
Debates.
Open class debates, very good, yeah. So there's different kinds of, speaking assessments that we use. But of course, I'm here to talk about something very specific today, that's presentations. Now, of course, there's two kinds of presentations that we all have used or must have used in the classroom. One is your individual student presentations, wherein they're given a topic, they prepare for a few days at home as homework, and then they come back and present it probably at the end of the week. There's also group presentations, wherein it's a more collaborative task where students work on certain topics together in the classroom, and then they come back and present it at the end of the week. Yeah. Now, when we talk about speaking assessments, what is it that we're actually trying to assess when the students are speaking? So, of course, we have the usual, we have grammatical accuracy, that's something that we're checking. We also want to look at the students' lexis, the kind of vocabulary that they're using to express themselves. Then the organization of ideas, do they sound coherent? Do the ideas sound organized? Then, of course, you have something called task completion, task achievement. So whatever topic was given to them, are the students actually addressing that topic when they present it? And preparedness. So do some students, I don't know if you've noticed, some students actually come with like prepared notes, so you can tell that they've worked on it. Some students just walk into the classroom and then they go on their rant. So there's obviously differences in language that you can see there. Then at the higher levels, this is more to do with not just sticking to the topic, not just stating facts, but also going beyond that and expressing their opinions on certain topics. And finally, something called, oh, sorry, I didn't get that. Pronunciation. Of course, do they sound comprehensible? Is there clarity in their pronunciation? And then we have something called interactive skills. Now, I don't know about you, but this is something that I've always wondered is when it comes to presentations, there's certain things that impede the assessment when the students are presenting certain topics. So again, certain things that I've experienced in the classroom is that when it comes to presentations, it's a lot of monologues because there's very little scope for interaction. It's like me, I'm standing here and I'm talking about certain things and the students in the audience, they're just listening to the presenter, they're not really participating, yeah? When it comes to group presentations, a lot of times the strongest students tend to take the lead. You can also tell that sometimes one student has put like a lot more effort into the presentation compared to the other students. They're not likely participating in the presentation either. And then of course, the little bit of AI, so ChatGPT. The more and more students get familiar with it, it's easier for them to just put in the topic, they get the whole presentation done for them, and they basically memorize the whole thing and come and present the topic. But as a teacher who's also seen them, I don't know, 2 days ago in the classroom, and they're not producing the same level of language all of a sudden. They just sound, really fluent, really proficient. Right, so this is something that I tried out with one of my students recently, and let's see this video, So I'm just going to show you a very short presentation that I recorded with a student. I'd like you to have a look and tell me what, or if you thought there was something different, anything different that happened towards the end of the presentation. Towards the end of the presentation, the student actually asked me a question. He asked me, oh, have you seen any of these places? Have you ever been to Mexico? Do you know of any of these places? And this is something that actually happened a few weeks ago, and I thought that it completely changed the tone of the presentation just because he asked me a question, and by the time, this is of course a recorded presentation, but when it actually happened in the classroom, the student had asked that question to the students in the classroom. And immediately all of the students actually jumped in. They had something to say. They said, okay, I've not been here, but I've been to this other place. Or, oh, have you been to this place? And immediately it just turned into an actual conversation, which had never happened before in the class. So that really gave me the idea that, when we talk about interaction, we always think about, when it comes to presentation, we always expect the audience to ask questions to the presenter. But why is it that presenters can't ask questions to the audience? In fact, when this student did that, these are some of the things that happened. The audience was obviously suddenly engaged. They wanted to participate. They had a few follow-up questions, which rarely, I'm sure you also know, which rarely ever happens, because when it comes to student presentations, there's that one person talking, everybody listens. At the end, the teacher is encouraging, oh, do you have any questions? Why don't you ask the students some questions? But they usually don't have any questions at all. But when the presenter actually asked a question to the audience first, then there was suddenly more questions coming up at the end. So it also, at the higher levels, I think it can promote critical thinking as well, because then you're building on the conversation there. And instead of a 5-minute presentation, then I've also experimented with 10-minute presentations where 5 minutes is for the presenter and then the 5 minutes is for critical thinking. That's when we open up to, like when we said, open class debates. Yeah, so the questions can actually turn into that sometimes when we're expressing opinions. It also brought an element of surprise. So the students were suddenly like, oh, we didn't expect the person to ask me something. And yeah, Right, so even when you talk about the CEFR, it talks about, when it comes to assessing speaking skills, it talks about range, accuracy, fluency, interaction, and coherence. So while range, accuracy, fluency, and coherence is fairly easier to assess in the classroom, interaction is something that's always lacking, and I think this could be one of the ways to encourage interaction in the classroom. Now, just quickly jumping back to the ChatGPT bit. Again, I think, not to say that AI shouldn't be used at all in the classroom, but instead of giving the presentation as a homework, I think actually using AI in the classroom and getting the students to work on it as a collaborative task can, I think, change the tone of the presentation. So you're actually introducing the different stages of presentations. So, talking about, guiding them through, researching the topic, analyzing the topic, actually building on the points. And at that point, if the student feels the need to use AI in the classroom, at least it's being done in a monitored situation. So it is useful to pick up phrases from using ChatGPT or linkers, ideas from ChatGPT. But when you're doing it in the class, you're encouraging the students to not completely copy it and memorize it, but you're actually encouraging them to use it in ways that can help them, but also bringing in their own language, which is what we're trying to assess at the end of the day. So, to quickly summarize and build on something that Ram said, for example, when he mentioned Grice earlier and he talked about language being used as something that I said and you understood, and then taking it a step further and talking about communication rather than just language, because language is used. Language is a tool to communicate, and communication obviously is a two-way conversation. Yeah, so that involves asking and answering questions. So to summarize, questions from the presenter, I think, are a brilliant way to promote discussion and not turn it into a monologue. And then, of course, turning presentations into a collaborative task in the classroom, so the students use a little bit of AI if they like, but it's not like they're completely dependent on it, and just limiting the use of that in the presentations. That's about. Thank you so much.